special surprise! Harley! Mama's got some stuff to do.
What's good, people? It's your boy Persona of Gaming with Persona and one half of the What's Up PlayStation podcast crew. I'm coming at you with my review for Gotham Knights. And boy, oh boy, this has been a game that I've been really excited for a very long time. And I'm here to give you all the details, right? Has it lived up to the expectations? Is it good? Is it bad? Is the performance as bad as people say? We're going to talk about it all. So just to help you, get you in the right place, here's some of the things that we will be talking about throughout this review, and the timestamps will be down in the description and in the comment section as well. So we're going to be talking about the story, the open world aspects, the RPG elements, the performance, combat, and then obviously I'll give my final thoughts with the score as well. So if you want to jump around to certain sections and things like that, check the description, also pinned to the comments as well for you to, jump around as your leisure. But listen, guys, kick back, relax, and I hope you enjoy this review. So let's start with the story. And the story of Gotham Knights starts off pretty high beat, actually, because it kind of starts you off where you see Batman fighting Ra's al Ghul, right? And essentially Batman dies, right? And that's the beginning of the game. And the game kind of plops you in as one of the four main characters of the Bat family. So Robin, Nightwing, Red Hood, and Batgirl. Those are the four characters that you can choose from to play within this game. And so after Batman's funeral, you see the four of them kind of standing around and trying to figure out what really was going on, trying to work Batman's last case. And come to find out, as you go deeper into the story and you figure out more clues and things like that, you realize that the last case that Batman was working on had to do with a faction known as the Court of Owls, which is a secret society that has been running Gotham for centuries, right? And so through the story beats of this game, you begin to unfold what they truly were doing in Gotham, how they were keeping themselves secret, and all these other crazy things and conspiracies and murder and things like that was going on within Gotham right under Batman's nose. And now it's up to the Bat family to stop them and figure out what's really going on in Gotham and keep Gotham safe. I like that premise, right? And I think that was a really good, I think they did a good job doing a really good telling of the Court of Owls story in this game, including the Bat family, but also including other factions and other characters in the Batman universe as well, and making it mesh really well, right? Because obviously you also got the League of Shadows, who's in this game as well, and you've got Talia al Ghul, which is in this game as well, who also has her own motives and her own thing that she's trying to do, but also some of the sub stories or side stories in this game as well, I think do a really good job. Like, the whole submission with Harley Quinn, which we've seen in previews a million times. That's actually the way that plays out, I think is actually really well. We really only see the end of that mission, but the beginning portions of that mission, I think is really good, really well, it does really good as well. And even Mr. Freeze, which is that mission storyline is crazy. And then obviously Clayface as well, which is another mission storyline. I think the side mission storylines in this game were really good, and they do a good job of kind of flowing within the main story of the game. Now, some of it might not be directly linked to the main story, but the way they bring these characters in while you're going through the story, I think is done really well. And like I said, the story itself, depending on what difficulty you play on, because you're going to have a lot of people that's telling you, well, the story's super quick, and all these other things. Playing on the hard difficulty and also doing a lot of the other stuff in the world, I don't really, if you were someone that was just going to power through, I guess. But I think for myself, I think a good time playing on hard difficulty was maybe 10, 11 hours if I was just to go straight through the story, because again, you're going to have to level up and do some other activities and content and things like that. But if you couple in the side storylines and stuff like that as well, we're talking maybe 15, 16 hours of gameplay when it comes to the story and the sub quest, which I think is a pretty cool time, especially when you couple in everything else. But in terms of the story and the sub stories, I really liked it. I thought it was a really good telling of a Batman story. So now let's talk about open world, right? And so I think the open world within Gotham Knights is actually a really beautiful city, right? The Gotham Knights in this game is very beautiful. It's a vast world. I think it actually looks really beautiful and really well done. It's very dense and there's a lot to do here. And you know, there's a lot of things to do in the city as well. So outside of the main story, you've also got your premeditated crimes, which are these right triangular markers that you will find on your map. And as well as there is different races that you could do, like a glide race or movement ability race. So it's all dependent on what character you're using. Because I'm using Batgirl, she's got these glide races with her movement ability. But also there's racing within the bat cycle races. And then there's all these other smaller crimes happening around the city that will represent as little markers, little triangular markers whenever you use your AR ability on your character to kind of see what's happening within the world. And the cool thing about that is, so say if you complete all of your premeditated crimes, which give big experience, and you know, they tend to feature much tougher enemies, and is a variety of different crimes that's happening, like robbing a bank and trying to break someone out of jail and all these other things. If you run out of those premeditated crimes, you do some of the smaller petty crimes and interrogate those enemies so that you can have them reveal what other crimes would be happening within the city, which is also really cool. And I also think WB Montreal actually did a really good job of maintaining that Bat family-esque, or that Batman universe-esque type of detective work that Batman and the family would normally do, because you have those types of crimes as well, where you would come across like a dead body or something like that in the open world that you have to investigate, and you have to figure out where the criminals might be. And then once you figure out that crime, that opens up a new premeditated crime, right? There's a lot of cool things like that in the open world that I think, you know, are really fun, you know, especially when you're fighting. You know, obviously this is not the portion of the video for fighting, but you know, fighting a lot of these enemies and whatnot, I think is really good and really fun. But I do think that the open world aspect of Gotham Knights, there's a lot to do in the city, because obviously you've also got other characters like Lucius Fox, Detective Montoya, The Watch, right? There's a lot of other characters, smaller characters that you come across in the open world that'll also give you certain missions and certain things that you'll need to do. So there's going to be a lot of busy work in Gotham Knights if you do decide to pick this up, outside of the story that you will be able to do that will keep you preoccupied. All right, so now let's talk about RPG elements. And this is going to be a pretty quick segment, only because I feel like the RPG elements in Gotham Knights is pretty straightforward. So there's really only 3 different sections that you have to worry about crafting for, and that is your overall bodysuit or costume, your melee weapon, and your ranged weapon. So even the stats I think are really straightforward. So obviously power has to do with your how strong the piece of armor is, and then, you know, defense, health, all of that is really self-explanatory. One of the cool things about the RPG elements of this game in terms of like crafting and whatnot is there are going to be a lot, as you progress through the game, characters are going to get a lot stronger, or excuse me, I should say enemies are going to get a lot stronger within the game. So you want to make sure that you are staying up to date on the best gear that you can craft. But coming across materials and things like that, especially if you know, do a lot of things in the open world in terms of the crimes, even small crimes, the larger crimes, the tougher crimes, and you do a lot of those repeat missions for some of the people in the open world, you'll get a lot of those materials that you need naturally to craft whatever piece of gear that you need. I never found myself needing to go out and farm materials or farm something in order to craft the best piece of gear. So I think that's a really good thing, you know, because it doesn't break the immersion for me personally, or really where it's like, oh, you know, I gotta farm this, I gotta grind this, like, you know, how some people may feel, which I did like. You know, it was just really straightforward. It was really straight to the point, which I did like. One of the other things is also mods as well. So there are different types of mods that you could put into your your gear and into your weapons. But again, this stuff is really straightforward and really to the point. There isn't like this super huge plethora of different mods to really choose from. In terms of your costume, there's really only health mods that up your health and your defense for a piece of gear. For your melee weapon, you'll have crit damage, crit chance, and higher elemental effects, right? So if you craft a weapon that's got like, you know, an ice elemental or fire elemental on there, you could put mods in there that makes the elemental build up against an enemy much higher, so they'll catch on fire or freeze much quicker, which opens them up to be able to do some really big devastating damage. And then obviously your ranged weapon as well have those same types of mods in terms of elemental effects, crit damage and crit chance. Although I found that crit chance was really hard to come by. I wasn't really getting that as much as I was like the elemental effect mods and the elemental damage mods. Like, you know, my build right now, you know, my my crit damage is like 90% chance, but my crit chance is only like 30 or 40, right? Which I was like, yo, that's kind of weird. Like, you know, I get why that would be like a much more rare mod to get, because if you got like 100% crit chance, I mean, you're pretty much one shot and everything. But even with my crit chance at 40%, I'm still doing a lot of big bad damage to the enemies, especially on hard difficulty, right? And then the last one is your skills itself. And like I said, the skills are really straightforward. It's not really anything to write home about. It's all really straightforward, and it all plays into whatever character you choose. It plays into their personality and how they are. So obviously with Batgirl, she's more of like a tech, and so like, you know, and she's tough as nails. Like that's one of the descriptions as well. When you're choosing your character, it'll have that, like she's tough as nails. So, you know, Batgirl is more of like a singular damage dealer that can also take damage, and her focus is really on like crits and crit damage and crit chance and stuff like that. So I had a lot of that stuff beefed up on her as well. And even her special knighthood ability, which allows her to call in a drone and whatnot to help her in battle, and also heals her up. That was also really cool as well. But I think the skills were really straightforward. It wasn't really anything too crazy, but I did like it. I thought it was pretty cool. And then the other thing that's really cool too about the gear section is that in terms of the style section, if you don't like the piece, if you craft a piece of gear and you don't like how it looks in terms of like your costume, you can go to the style section and transmog that piece of gear and make it look like whatever costume you want. Now, the only issue with that is that if you do transmog a piece of gear, you can't untransmog it. So once you make it into whatever other costume you want it to be, you're kind of stuck with that. And the only way to change that is to craft a new piece of gear or something like that, or craft the same gear again if you wanted to like change it up. But if you do, what you can also do is you can also change the actual gear itself. So you can actually, if you craft a piece of gear and you want to change how the cowl looks or the color of the gear or stuff like that, all of that can be done under the style section as well. So, you know, like I said, it's very straightforward, straight to the point. But, you know, it has some really interesting, I have like some really interesting builds that you could do. You know, fire build, ice build, poison build, concussion build, which stuns enemies and leaves them dazed and whatnot. I thought it was a pretty good and pretty straightforward, and I think for a lot of people who may get into this game, it'll definitely be very easy to follow. Okay, so now let's talk about the combat, right? So I think the combat in Gotham Knights is actually really fun, right? So, you know, playing with Batgirl, she is definitely a power hitter, right? And I know there's been a lot of controversy about this combat feeling really slow or really sluggish and not as quick as Arkham Knight games. I beg to differ, and I don't know, maybe this is just a mind over matter thing, but I felt like the combat, especially when you get used to it, it got quicker to me, especially the higher level I got with my Batgirl and got better armor and understood the strikes and how the fighting works and things like that. I felt that the combat, it flowed really well for me. I never really found myself saying, oh, well, this combat is just too slow. This combat is, oh, too sluggish, especially when you're fighting multiple enemies like you see here on the screen. You know, I'm kind of all over the place. You see Batgirl kind of, you know, dodging here, dodging there, hitting this, hitting that. And so the thing about the combat that you have to keep in mind is that the heavy hit and the light hit is both tied to the same button. So, and you know, this is just a speculation, but I feel like some people might actually just be holding square and they may be thinking that it's too slow like that. Because like I said, fighting in this, understanding that the heavy and light strikes both share the same button, I was like, all right, that make, you know, I get it. Okay, let me kind of build my game plan around that. And I never really found myself like saying this is too slow. And also the other thing too is that there are perfect strikes in this game, and perfect strikes is where if you're in the middle of a combo and you're hitting the button at just the right time, the move that comes out is vastly different than what a normal move would be, where she'll do like 2 or 3 hits in one move type of thing, or it'll be like a like, you know, one of her moves that she does like this somersault hit, which I think is really cool. So I think when it comes to the actual combat of Gotham Knights, I like it. I think it flows really well. And even when you're trying to combo into your momentum abilities, again, I think personally it flows just well enough for me to be like, yeah, this works. I like how this maneuvers and whatnot. All right, now let's talk about the performance of the game. The performance of Gotham Knights is not good, especially on the PlayStation 5, right? If you were going to pick this up on PS5, I would say wait, because there is a lot of frame pacing and frame rate issues, especially if they're riding the bike through the world. You'll see a lot of like frame dips and skips and things like that that's going on. Sometimes, you know, gliding through the world or scaling tall buildings and things like that, you'll see a lot of frame rate issues happen. Now, the world itself is very beautiful. The character models is very beautiful. And despite the game being very fun, I really can't recommend the game in its current state with the frame rate issues that's going on. I would say wait for them to fix those frame rate issues. But I do think that when we're talking about a next gen only game, the fact that it doesn't have a performance mode, that's the first issue. The fact that it doesn't have any type of next gen DualSense features, you know, especially with the combat, it would have been really dope to have that added in with the game. That's not there either. And then on top of that, we're having a lot of frame rate issues with the game, especially when me and Barry were doing our co-op experience. There was a lot of frame rate issues there as well. It's not well optimized. Now I understand they wanted to do this whole untethered thing, which I think is cool, but you know, if the performance is not there to match the experience that you're trying to provide, that's a big issue. And that's a big issue here for me, especially through my playthrough of the game. I experienced a lot of those issues. I didn't necessarily experience any crashes per se, but I did experience a lot of frame rate issues. And I know that Gotham Knights said that they are going to be putting out a couple of patches within the coming weeks to fix and address a lot of these optimization and frame rate issues. But as of right now, as the recording of this video, those issues are still present within the game, unfortunately. All in all, I think Gotham Knights really is a very fun experience that's just plagued by some performance issues. The world, the combat, the story, the characters, the interaction, a lot of that stuff I thought was very fun. The RPG elements, all that stuff I think is very good. But in this day and age, especially with these much more powerful consoles, it's hard for me to excuse or overlook the performance issues that we experienced with this game. So I would say for my listeners and people who listen to my channel, buy with caution, you know, monitor Gotham Knights Twitter to see where they're at with those performance patches and whatnot. But if I had to give the game a score right now, I thought long and hard about this too, guys. I really thought about this, and I'm gonna have to give Gotham Knights a 7.5 out of 10. But you know, let me know in the comments, did you buy Gotham Knights? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? You know, are you gonna pick this up? Let me know in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all of you who rock out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. It's been your boy Persona, and I'm out, guys. Peace.